to Overcoming. I'm Leslie Meshwani from Minuteman Senior Services, and we're one of the 26 aging service access points in the state. So what I'm going to be talking about, our core programs will be available to every city, every town in the state. It just may be through a different aging service access point, okay? So as you've heard, we certainly work with the police department. We have a protective service department that is designated by the state to investigate abuse, neglect, self-neglect kind of issues. And sometimes, a lot of times those things will come up when caregivers are very overwhelmed. And it's truly a lot of times when boundaries just haven't been set or services have not been tried and you're trying to do it by yourself. And it just gets beyond what you can do. So I think one of the biggest things, and I would just concur, that prevention is key. Learning about services and then trying to help the care recipient accept those services. So protective services can certainly help with that. We're certainly all mandated reporters as well. And then a lot of the programs that we do have, we have a family caregiver support program that is federally funded under Title, I'm going to draw a blank, Title III of the Older Americans Act. That allows for a caregiver specialist to meet with you wherever you would like, your home, work, in the office, coffee shop, and just really focus on you, listening to what's going on for you, and try to connect to services to support you. We have also programs that support the care recipient, in-home care management and in-home services like a personal care attendant or a homemaker who could do your shopping and things like that. So that is sort of giving that a family member some respite, some ongoing respite, which then you can address the issues around your own family or working or your own personal goals. So we have seen many things like caregivers who are concerned that maybe their parent or their spouse is going to fall. Falls are one of the biggest reasons why folks go into a nursing home. Hip fractures are, I think, one of the biggest readmissions or admissions. And you can do a lot of things to prevent falls. You kind of have to do a medical, I would say a medical scan, where you're going to the physician and really looking at what might be medical reasons for a fall. Sometimes it's medications that may be causing dizziness or drowsiness. There might be some issues around nutrition where you really aren't getting the nutrients so that you're strong enough. You may not be getting exercise so that you have the strength or balance. And then there's also environmental factors in the home that you can really look at or have like an occupational therapist come out that can be paid for through Medicare if it's a doctor's order. Or we also have a home safety assessment that we do. And some of the Council on Agings have home safety assessments that they will do as well. But there's different things in the environment that will cause someone to fall. Or maybe they need to be using a walker and maybe trying to help that person kind of get to that point where that might be something they're willing to do. So it's tricky. Is this on? Hello? And then also, one of the things that we do is, our mission is truly to help someone remain in the setting of their choice. So all of the in-home services that we subcontract out for are allowing for that. We are seeing a lot of families who are long-distance caregivers, who maybe are from California or outside the state, or maybe just far enough away in the western part or down, on the Cape or something where they can't get to the elder in time. So they're trying to do caregiving by proxy or trying to connect that, and that can just be very nerve-wracking where you don't really have a backup or someone who has eyes on that person on a regular basis. So a lot of the connections and the services that you can get at an ASAP or a Minuteman can help with that, so that you can have some reassurance that your parent or your family member is being cared for, and that you can have someone just be checking in on them so that they know that they're okay. And I would say then a lot of things we're also seeing too is with transitions from the hospital and nursing home back home, a lot of people are going home to a place by themselves where they're, especially those 30 days when you're first at home and you're recovering those are the times where you really do need some additional support with nutrition, with your medications, with getting transportation back to the physician's office. And there's a lot of errors or just gaps in service where maybe someone didn't need help, but now a medical event has happened and now they do, but they don't have any services in place and they're like, no, I think I can do it. And they get home and now they don't have the support in place that maybe they had at the hospital or the nursing home for a short-term stay. And that can be a cause for readmission. So we're working a lot with hospitals and nursing homes to really support those transitions.
Realized that this was a scam. She was really very concerned and they were very, very believable. I also had a situation in which I was in a client's home dealing with some other issues and the phone rang. The caregiver, who herself, was not a Native American speaker, and she answered the phone. And it was at that point the electric company calling to say if she hadn't paid by 5 o'clock or if the homeowner hadn't paid by 5 o'clock, they were going to come and arrest her, and they were going to arrest her caregiver as well. And I just happened to be in the home when that had happened. So these things are extremely prevalent, and it's very, very frightening. From our perspective, again, one of the most important things is beginning the conversation. There's a fabulous book out there that we keep on the desk in one of the offices that's Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant? Because nobody wants to have these conversations. I can remember with my own grandmother, she would start to talk about who was going to get the silver set and blah, blah, blah. And we'd all be like, oh my goodness, we don't want to have this conversation with you because it feels uncomfortable, but it's critical. It's critical to know what your loved one wants to have happen. When I'm talking with my senior clients about these kinds of things, and they're choosing, for instance, who's going to be their healthcare proxy, one of the things that I talk with them about is the importance of talking with their healthcare proxy beforehand about what they would or would not want to have done in a crisis. There is nothing worse than to have a loved one in the middle of a medical crisis and you're making life and death decisions for this person and you don't have a clue about what they want to have done. The guilt that comes with that, the second guessing that comes with that, we all suffer from it. And so having those conversations ahead of time, if you're the caregiver, talking with your loved one and saying it's really important that I understand how you'd want things handled. Healthcare decisions, finances, understanding what their philosophy is around things is critical for you as the caregiver in order to be able to give you the confidence to be able to make decisions and not to be second guessing yourself later on.
So I guess I would absolutely just concur. I think the theme is prevention, prevention, prevention. Learn everything you can in your own time, but as best you can, and get connected to services and understanding what the network of services are before you need it. We always say we're there for you. We will absolutely work with you in crisis. It is just so much easier on you if you're doing this without having to deal with someone in the hospital or, my goodness, now I'm having to now figure out who's going to come into the home and meet all these people and now do insurance and all this other stuff. It's very difficult. It's really hard. And we see those folks every day. So we just encourage you to, as you're doing now, start learning. One of the handouts back there that I put on the table is called Build Your Community Care Team. And it kind of gives you a sense of who are the professionals that would be helpful in the long term that you would want to have to support you in this journey. Because it is a journey. It's a chronic caregiving is a journey. It's not that acute kind of, maybe I'm going to do this for 2 or 3 weeks and I'll go back to my life and everything's going to be fine. Chronic caregiving is for years, decades sometimes. And if you're dealing with someone who has cognitive issues around dementia or Alzheimer's, it can be incredibly unpredictable, and the behavioral challenges and the emotional loss that you go through on a continual basis is very difficult. So one of the things that I would suggest is putting those emotional supports in and getting connected to counselors, to support groups, to the Powerful Tool class. It's a fabulous class, really helps you to frame healthy caregiving. And to meet other caregivers who really understand what you're going through, who understand what it says, I'm stressed. When someone else says they're stressed, it's a little different than when a caregiver uses that same word. So it's about building that, because over the long haul, Those are the emotional losses are some of the things that I've seen that absolutely deplete caregivers, and it takes them down. It takes them so that you're becoming ill, and we don't want that. We want you to be strong. We want the person that you're caring for to be as healthy and as have a good quality of life as possible. So when we do the care plan, we do it for both of you. What is the needs of the care recipient? What are the needs of the caregiver? And you try to make a care plan around both of those things. They'll be different, but you want to try to encompass as many needs as possible. That way, you are going to be replenishing on a daily basis instead of becoming depleted. Because over time, over years of depletion, that's when you're going to become ill. Depression is the most undiagnosed illness for caregivers. It is treatable, but so many times people are focused on what they need to do for their loved one. They're trying to get through their day, but over and over and over, day after day, you're losing more and more and more of what you normally would have done for your own self-care. And so that's something that we want to address. It's a preventive issue, but that's why I say the emotional support's what I've seen over years. That's one of the biggest tools, and it's something that people don't think about, but that is it's a key component, I would say, to healthy caregiving.
I think we've heard some very important information. There are things that I had not thought about myself that you folks have brought up, and so I think this has been very valuable. But I think also there are a lot of questions out in the audience. So if you have a question, put your hand up and then stand up, give us your name, and then ask your question, please. So.
I'll start. So I have a question. Even if you have, let's say, the power of attorney, but your parent is not fully incompetent, and you are afraid that they're going to be doing something financial, but you don't want to go into court. I mean, just what are steps that you can take to protect them, to prevent, if you think they're vulnerable to a scam, or what steps can you take short of going into court and taking away their credit card?
Well, that's a really difficult one, because the presumption is that each of us is competent to make decisions for ourselves. And the whole idea of a power of attorney, and it depends on the type of power of attorney. There are some powers of attorney that are immediately effective. And so certainly if you have one of those, you can at least have a conversation with the bank. You may be able to take a look and see, can I look at the past couple of statements just to see what's been happening over the last 6 months or so that you can see if you can identify something. But if it gets to a point where the individual themselves is refusing, that they're still competent, and you've talked with their physician and you've had an opportunity to say, I'm concerned, could we maybe do an evaluation here and see what's happening? People still have a right to self-determination, and people do still have rights to make even bad decisions for themselves. And it is a very fine line. I mean, certainly to reach out to the resources that are here. If you feel your loved one is potentially being scammed, you want to give your police department a call and talk to them. But there are lines that all of us can't cross when someone is still competent, even if they're making bad decisions for themselves. And I don't know if you all see something different with that.
No, the example I gave earlier, the person wanted to make that money to that country thinking they're going to win the lottery, and the family was there saying it's a scam. We were there saying it's a scam, and there was nothing we could do at that point to keep them from doing what they wanted to do.
I would just concur. I mean, the Protective Service Department, anybody can make a report. A family member can make a report. It's anonymous. So if you really are feeling that you're not getting through, sometimes it does help to have someone from a professional setting bring that information to them or investigate that, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily are going to accept that. They still can make their own determination. But that is something that, and we've certainly seen an increased number of protective service reports.
Yes.
Nancy Tavernier. What I worry about is people who don't have family around, either don't have family at all or far away. Do you have a sense in the town of who those people might be, so that there's anyone to check on them, or, you know, I mean, I can think of people in my neighborhood who live alone and have never had children.
Oh, don't
We typically will get some of those calls, I'm concerned about my neighbor. We'll go over to a well-being check, and then based on observations we make of the way the house is kept, how they're kept, how they are, then we start making those referrals. We call the council on aging, you know, have you dealt with this person before? Talk to the neighbors, do we know if they have any family? We've reached out to people in other parts of the country and try to say, hey, have you talked to this person? Neighbors are concerned, almost like something's starting to fall off or deteriorate. And we'll try to get as many people as we can involved in that person's care. And then if it rises to the point of neglect or self-neglect, that's when we start making those referrals, and I'll hand the mic down now.
And you can see, we do really work collaboratively, and it's a really wonderful thing. So there are a lot of folks who do know people in the town, who are very aware of town members. And so if we do get a call, and Protective Services does go out, what they're trying to discern is this claim legitimate, and then try to help connect that person to services. So one of our services is Meals on Wheels. So that's a really, it's not just the meal, it's also someone going to your home every day, bringing this to you. It's socialization, but it's also a safety check, right? And we train our volunteers, if they are seeing something, they report that back to the supervisor, and then we will address that. And we, you know, if we need to have the police go out, or whoever it may be, the social worker at the Council on Aging, we will do that. But that's one way, one service, where it's absolutely about a safety check, more than a meal, for sure. Yes?
My name is Pina, and my question is, we are using the services of Minuteman with my parents, my elderly parents who are living with us. It's been wonderful. I've been so grateful. They're talking about wanting to move back to their home in Sudbury, which is out of your.
But BayPath covers it.
So do I need to start all over again, or is that something
No,
that
it
like?
just transfers.
Does it just transfer?
You just call BayPath, and then
Okay,
they will
super.
transfer.
Okay, so that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's all through the state.
Okay.
That's all connected through the state.
Okay, super.
Yes.
My name is Sahana. I have a question. This is completely different than what we're talking here. It's about people like, I have friends, it's not my parents, but, people who come to visit here, elderly folks, and they're on visitors insurance. So something happens, and like a stroke or an attack or something, they're rushed to the nearby hospital. And many of the times, the traveler's insurance does not cover a particular hospital, and then you're left with all these bills and the doctor bills and stuff like that. Is there anything that, any information for folks like this, that any advice, what can be done with health insurance at that point?
I can even answer that. It is a tough call. A lot of the programs are covered by American insurance, so you would have to look at the particular traveler's insurance that they have to see what's covered. So you may have the hospitalization covered, but maybe you don't have the in-home care that would normally be covered, maybe say by Medicare with the visiting nurses or something like that. Or with us, with the state home care, you're a visitor, so you're not really going to be necessarily eligible for the long-term services, but we might be able to support you as the caregiver. And so, again, I would call the information referral specialist. They will look at your individual situation and then do some research and try to figure out what program or what resource they do have that they can connect you to. But it would be I would say a much narrower range of services would be my thought. Yeah, that is tough.
Do you have any thoughts?
Just
that sometimes reaching out to the facilities too, something like the hospital, being able to have a conversation with their financial planning department over there, they can sometimes do some things to help reduce bills where appropriate, to look for other sources in terms of helping to supplement payment. And they, you know, a lot of the hospitals, not-for-profits, do have charitable organizations connected with them so that they can help in some ways. It's always worth having that conversation to see about negotiating a bill.
Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Virginia, and I am the recipient. And I always go around saying I work part-time all the time, taking care of myself. So I use Minuteman, and I've used a lot of agencies for my care. I'm getting totally worn out because I'm handling everything instead of my children. So I don't know where to turn for some sort of a, almost like an artificial child or an artificial person in charge of me. I've noticed there are some memory issues already, mix-ups on scheduling. I'm very attentive usually, very precise and organized, and books and calendars, the works. It's like running a business. My kids couldn't do it. They have no clue what's going on. No matter who told them anything, they still are too busy supporting themselves and running their own affairs. They haven't got time for me. And it's not a pity thing, it's a reality thing. So where can I turn to get, I feel that Minuteman particularly is a double-edged sword. They work at it very hard, I've had a lot of great experiences, and then there's a flip side. And because I have 3 layers of insurance, I have a nurse care manager at Tufts Senior Care Options. And I'm on the phone at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times a day, every day. And I'm on the phone with all the different caregivers, and just to organize and be a leader in my own home to train people wipes me right out. I have people coming to me about 7 hours a week. And just to organize their time as if I was an employer. And I actually could be too, because Minuteman has a program where you can administer their entire setup of support staff. It's daunting.
I think it's very helpful that you've shared this with us, because I think there are many people that are facing the same issues. I think what I might suggest is that once we finish here, that you speak with Leslie.
Yeah, but I'm happy to talk about this. So I think, you know, as you say, on the flip side, if your family members aren't local, or if they're not really, or you don't want them involved, or they are sort of opting out themselves, then you are in a situation where we really are trying to coordinate all those services and have a lot of different involvement in your home and keeping track of that. So I applaud you for, you know, working at that.
I have no choice.
And
Well,
I would say,
I really seriously don't feel as though I have a choice.
okay. Well, what I would say is that, I mean, it seems like, you know, you're in a particular program with the SCOs, the Senior Care Options Program, and there is a care manager, all right? So a care manager, I would say, is a very good option to help you with managing those schedules. Now, I realize within any kind of program like that, they're limited to the coordination of services that that we're contracting out for.
And just along on that,
Mhm.
the person who's in charge, or at least works with Tufts clients,
Yes.
isn't there. She's.
We're partnering, right, so what's the,
And it's
Mhm.
very little actual ability to communicate. And whatever communication does happen,
Mhm.
somehow or other, does not stay clear. It's like a game of telephone. And it's constantly leaving messages, no human beings. And I am then trying to carry on my other life, which is trying to have interesting activities. Well, you can't be home when I need to call you, what'd you call me for?
Right. So I can work with you on kind of a better communication system, I think. But I think for the general kind of conversation, I would say care management is a good option for trying to coordinate services. And at Minuteman, we do have now an option, care management option for pretty much every family. We now have a private paid care management program too for folks who aren't eligible for the state home care or the school programs. And so they can then coordinate all of the services. But again, it's private pay, so, but I can work with you on that, I can. Good.
Thank you. I see in the back.
I was going to just try to, hi, my name is Meredith. I was going to try to be helpful for a moment there, thinking that you have very valid concerns that you are obviously experiencing personally, and it does seem like if you could take a little time
Oh, yeah,
alone
absolutely.
too, of course, that would be lovely in your own style that you do so nicely. All of you tonight have done a really magnificent job. I'm very proud to live in this community and to have for years seen some of you taking the positions you have and the growth professionally. It's a very serious subject. There are lots and lots of us experiencing lots of concern with our own aging parents. Those of us who are professionals also are not unscathed. We too have ourselves aging. We are all aging, let's not forget that, and our own parents and our children accordingly. A couple of things I would like to add that may be helpful. One, in terms of the police department, I'd like to do a little kudos and also ask you a question. So as a private care manager, I have several clients that are living in their own homes, wanting to live out their lives as much as possible, as independent as possible. But many of them have a degree of dementia, whether it be Alzheimer's, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, different reasons that has happened to them. Many of them have private caregivers. Some of those I oversee. The concern that we've had and wondered about, and I haven't come to you alone, and I'm saying this tonight because I think it could help everyone, to also come to you possibly letting you know, as long as there's not a breach of confidence, obviously I'm an ethical practitioner there, but if we could come to you and have you be aware that we have a client in the community that does have a degree of dementia, where there are times that although they have top-notch, cream-of-the-crop caregivers that maybe have worked with me 20 years and I know them, that you could know, so that should that elder become frightened, be disoriented, and call you because this person's in my house, I don't know who they are, they're trying to feed me poison or whatever, that we could actually utilize you gentlemen and women on the force to please help at times when you get to a home like that where there may be a caregiver who has been caring for that person 6 or 8 years, but you could be helpful too in kind of calming that storm a little. Do you know where I'm going?
Certainly, and we do that a lot now.
Okay.
We
So I
do
haven't
get those
asked you to do
calls,
that.
and obviously if we know it ahead of time, we have a computer-aided dispatch system. So if it's, 371 Main Street, we can put a little notation in there.
Wait a minute, that's my address.
You live at the public safety facility? Oh, you're at the end of the offices, the other end of the hall.
Going by.
That's why I use a generic address. But yeah, we can put something in the CAD that there might be
Always good.
a dementia issue, an Alzheimer issue,
Okay.
to let us know. So as we're dispatching the call, it gives the officer an idea of what we're walking into.
Okay. Thank you.
And part of that is that mental health issue that we deal with a lot, and we do the referrals with that clinician, but we're trying to train our offices in various degrees. There's a 40-hour training, critical incident training, CIT. It's a little intensive to get 43 sworn officers through. They have a 4-hour mental health first aid that we're trying to get as many people through to just make us aware of some of these issues and be able to respond to them appropriately.
And I just want to add one thing. There's also a, what's called a safe return bracelet. And if you have Alzheimer's or dementia, a lot of times you can get that. And it's just something that you wear on your arm. It has like a number, and then you would call this organization, whether it's the ambulance driver or the police or whoever's kind of, if you're wandering or you're not sure where you are, then they would have the information of who to call, and they would have information about you. So it's not on your arm, it's not, you know, disclosing anything. We also suggest, though, that the caregiver has that too, because if something would happen to you, you're in a car accident, whatever, no one knows that there's someone at home who needs some attention right away. So it's a way to have communication to physicians or first responders so that everybody's safe.
I didn't quite understand. Where, you as a caregiver are wearing a bracelet?
Both the care recipient and it just has the information for the Safe Return Company so that if you're in a situation, they know to contact, they'll contact the company and then they will be able to tell the police or the ambulance driver what's going on. Yes. Yeah. That way you're not disclosing anything on your hand to anyone.
Who provides that service?
It's called Safe Return.
Another question? Yes, wait.
Hi, Lisa, this question is probably best answered by Kathleen. Since caregivers often assume responsibility for the loved one's finances, and with so much of our lives being conducted online these days, how do you access and capture all the financial information that you may not have no information about, like with passwords and whatever?
Well, again, if possible, this is where conversations ahead of time are important. When I'm dealing with my clients, for instance, and they say, well, where should I keep my important documents? I talk about them putting together kind of a binder of information that their loved ones will know where to look for it, so that they can find things like passwords and they can identify where bank accounts are. And there's interesting statistics out there about things like life insurance and how many life insurance policies go unclaimed because when an individual passes away, the life insurance company's not looking for you to find out, gee, we need to pay this out to you. So it's kind of an example of the fact that there's a lot of information oftentimes that we don't know about our loved ones, and here we are in a crisis trying to find it all out. So ideally, it's to have all that information ahead of time, or at least to know where to find that. You know, there's wonderful programs like, 1Password and all of that that allows 1Password then to access all the passwords. Now, having said that, that's not oftentimes the way it happens. And so, if you're in a crisis and you're looking for information, there's certainly good places to start. You don't know what your parents' assets are because they're not sharing it with you ahead of time. You start by looking at their tax returns. See if you can find those, see if you can identify 1099 forms that at least will begin to start to show you what banks they're using, where they may have some assets located, those kinds of things. But you really do have to put on an investigative hat at that point and try to dig through their paperwork. And think about your own paperwork, by the way, as you're doing all of this. Where do you keep your stuff? If, God forbid, somebody had to step into your shoes, could they fairly easily start to identify where things are so that they could manage your affairs? So start the conversation early if you can. Ask these hard but important questions. And if not, you got to get your investigative hat on and you got to start looking.
And would add to keep it up to date, because my daughter has my notebook with everything. My funeral's all paid for, everything's done. She's so lucky. Well, things change all the time, and it's a real pain in the neck to keep it up to date.
It really is. And one of the other things, and it just went, powers of attorney. It's really interesting. These documents continually change. And one of the things that we now have recently added, in probably the past 3 or 4 years, is the ability for the attorney, in fact, the person who you've named to step into your shoes, to have access to your online accounts as well. And that's an important thing to make sure that you have authority over if necessary.
Way in back.
If you are not the caregiver, but you have a friend who is being a caregiver, and you see that caregiver getting to the edge of being able to hold it together, how can you provide care for the caregiver?
It's nice that she has you. And you're thinking about her. So, I mean, you know your friend. You know, you know her. I don't know your friend. But I would say in general, I think it's very validating to have someone listen to you and to try to really express and praise and encourage all the good things that you're doing. It is also, I would say, planting seeds, never a bad thing. And giving information about powerful tool classes. There's a Savvy Caregiver class that's specifically around Alzheimer's that we're going to be doing. It's about saying, you know what, I learned something, and there are some supports out there, and you know what, if you want to stay strong, I'd like to have my friend be able to go do something with me later on, so maybe we can, you know, you might want to look at that, so we can go and you know, continue to do some things together, and that you're still around. I just would say, you just have to be patient. People are doing their very best. They have so many details, so many tasks, so much emotion, so many things they're trying to even get through the day. But if you're really seeing someone deteriorate medically, emotionally, it's really important to just, with kindness, plant those seeds and help guide them, but in a patient way. It's the best I can say. Yes.
Hi, I'm Shelley, and one of the questions that I wanted to pose to you guys is, given the experiences that I've had, how do you convince people that they actually need help? I mean, as a child, watching your parents decline, you know, they're very resistant to any suggestions that maybe things aren't so great. What tips can you give the audience on how to maybe plant the seeds or encourage them to get the support?
I do this one kind of a visual when I do my agency overview. It's with blocks. And I don't know if I can do this and hold the mic, but well, I'll pretend the mic is a block. And I say, okay, here's my bridge, right? Would you drive over a bridge with only one support? Is this really a very strong bridge? It isn't. No one would do that. So when you're caregiving, you could think about, this is the work, the load you're carrying. Here's you, okay? You've got to build some other supports under here. When you have more supports under here, you have a strong foundation, and you will make it through. So many caregivers do not make it through, especially when they're caring for someone with Alzheimer's. A lot of times they die first. Okay? Yeah. I mean, it's really intense. One of the reasons why folks go into nursing homes is because the caregiver can no longer do it. They're medically ill. So if you keep saying, well, I can do it, so many reasons that people continue to try to do it themselves is around duty and honor. I think the vow when you're married, that one, ooh, that one really gets people to just keep trying. So I give absolute patience and respect and honor. I've worked with a lot of caregivers, and I've seen how long it takes them to incorporate information and then take those brave steps and trying something out, and then they pull back and they're not sure. It takes a lot of time to work those supports in, but it's critical. It's critical. And one of the things we're doing at Minuteman is to try to get to caregivers ahead of time. So when we're trying to do these welcome packets, not waiting for a referral to be made when someone's in crisis, but to talk to them about supports ahead of time. And I can't say enough about the Powerful Tool class. It is a great way to learn about caregiving, healthy caregiving, and how to start doing things and thinking about things in a proactive way. I would say support groups. Support groups are critical. And they're not for everyone, I get that, but they're a huge support. And you really will learn from each other, and you'll see something in someone else and you'll think, oh, maybe that is something I should try, or wow, look what, she was so brave and she did that. You know, it gives you strength and it gives you community when you're being so isolated yourself. So,
I think part of the question was, how do you deal with someone who actually needs the services but denies that they do, or will not accept that they do? Same process.
It's the same process with the caregiver. The caregiver doesn't want it, the care recipient may not want it either. And a lot of times the strength that you have to be so independent, with either caregiver or the care recipient, is what got you there, right? But it's the strong people sometimes have the hardest time asking for help. What I've always said is asking for help is a skill. You gotta break it down and you gotta just keep trying those little steps. But it's critical. You've gotta do it.
Yes.
So question to Kathleen, just that's a little bit more specific, similar to the question just asked. So I have parents who are 80 years old, and we do need to talk about, what to do for their health and what to do with finances. And when you have those discussions, you can feel the hair on their back going up, and it's they're not interested. So are there words or something that you can say to kind of juggle it? I don't know whether they think we're infringing on their life or whether they think we're out to get their money. I mean, I don't know what it is, but somehow there has to be a discussion point that you can have to get those two things done specifically.
Well, I have to laugh. My husband is my partner, and the two of us sit sometimes as we're dealing with our own client base, and we say, sure, which one of our children are we going to put in the position of a power of attorney? And I've got 3 great kids, don't get me wrong. But I can understand that from the parent's point of view. I mean, I'm dealing with my 80-some-odd-year-old clients. They don't see themselves as 80 years old and starting to have some difficulty dealing with something. And so it's a very, very hard conversation to have, and it really is all about balance. But what I do try to say to my clients is it's also about control. And if you were in the situation in which you could no longer make some critical decisions for yourself, do you want to have control over who's going to be in that position, or do you want to leave it to chance? Because the other part of what I do is oftentimes I'm in a position in which a court appoints me as the guardian for somebody. Now I'm in a position of needing to make healthcare decisions, decisions about where this person is going to live and what's going to happen in their lives. And I've never met them before. And I have no clue as to what their value system is or what they would want to have done in this situation. So in approaching someone who is very hesitant to begin to do this kind of planning, we talk a lot about that this is really to ensure that your wishes are known and that they're followed. And so who would you want to be in this position if you couldn't make decisions for yourself? And would respect what your decision making would be and how it would be done.
And there's on our website, on the Minuteman website, we're a member of the Honoring Choices. So a lot of the forms are on there, but there's a link to their website that will help you to kind of plan that discussion. And it kind of walks you through what that discussion is like. And the Conversation Project is another one I think is very good too.
Behind closed hands. Maybe it was your hand.
Way back?
Oh, way back. Yeah.
I had the reverse. I was hoping you could each touch on the reverse side, which is when my younger sister is the youngest, and she's doing I'm proving I'm an adult by seeing my parents as being incapable, and I'm going to treat them like they're incapable and go in there and start talking about stuff that is, she's stretching. And so I like what you said, is that you have the right to do something stupid like send $100,000 to another country. Maybe you can give us some other examples of how we need to respect that control and self-direction, even if somebody is older and you see them as needing some help, but you need to be aware that they have the right to do something stupid, or they have the right to be happy in their own weird way. To you, it looks like they must really be unhappy being all alone like that, but if they insist that, no, I really want to be left alone, then you have to kind of respect that. I just wondered if the three of you could say something about that.
Well, it's interesting. So part of my practice is guardianship work and going into court and needing to plead in front of a judge about a case. And there's one particular judge who, when I first started out, used to drive me nuts. But the more I paid attention to what he was saying, the more I understood it. I would begin by saying, well, this individual is an 86-year-old, and he'd say, counsel, this is 86 years young. And it's really true. It's about mindset, and it is about respecting people's individual choices. And I don't know, that it also is you may not be able to change your sister's mind about this and how she's approaching. But certainly you can change how you're approaching and help your parents or your loved ones have independence where possible, to be able to respect as much of their own decision-making as possible. And again, this goes to conversation. This is why I want to understand what your wishes are, because I want this all to be honored to the extent that we're able to do it. So it is about mindset. The longer I have done this, the more I have an appreciation as people age, that age in and of itself is not incompetence. It is not incapability. There are more and more of my clients who are living more independent lives at home, very successfully, and that really is the goal, I believe, that we all have for ourselves and for our loved ones. But we do, as a society, need to change how we're looking at the aging process and our immediate responses to somebody who may be of X age and what we're thinking about them. Because I got to tell you, the more I'm getting up to those ages myself, the more I'm saying, wait a minute, this whole system has to change. I'm not sure quite how to change it yet, but man, I want to find out before I get there. And part of it really is how we're thinking about it all.
I think that's what I wanted to hear mostly, was what is the philosophy that you guys use in this work that supports and ensures the respect for the person who's getting the help?
We absolutely are social workers, social service, so we start with the premise of self-determination and the least restrictive intervention. And we also work from a person-centered philosophy, which means you're really trying to understand who this person is, what their informal supports are, what their community is, what's important to them, what their priorities are, not what I think without judgment, about how they want to live. And as long as that is within the way that the state or maybe the Board of Health defines safety, we're fine. And a lot of times family members do not agree. But we're about making sure that that elder or that person has their rights respected, right? As long as they have capacity.
My question is related to this, actually. Where does the liability or the responsibility of the durable power of attorney, like, if you, in trying to give your elder the choices that they want to make, which you may not think is completely the safest, for example. My parents want to take some risks that I'm worried about, and I'm their durable power of attorney. I don't know if there's, with mandatory reporters, and where does my response, I mean, I know that I have responsibilities that I can be helpful to them, but can I also be held responsible for decisions that they make that may put them in harm's way? Do you know what I mean?
So no, is what when you're acting as power of attorney, you have to act in what we call a fiduciary capacity, which means that you are doing for them and what is the best interest for them. So in handling their bank accounts, let's say, you can't be taking money for yourself and somehow trying to couch that this is in their best interest. But if they are competent again and capable, and that's where a lot of this lies, and they are acting on their own behalf, they get to make bad decisions.
And I'm not talking financially, about where they're living in, the environment in which they're choosing to live, that. That's my specific issue.
So oftentimes we see where, as hard as it is, that crises needs to occur. We do everything we can to try to prevent it. Again, this is where you learn about your resources, you find out what's out there, you know kind of what your next steps would be. But can you force your loved one to go from point A to point B unless there is, again, a competency issue and they are not making good decisions because of a lack of capacity or competency? No. And you may have to wait for them to fall, literally. Or that their health care will deteriorate to a point. Then you want to know what can you do when that happens. And again, being able to know what your resources are, know what if nursing home placement is necessary, what assisted living looks like, etc., what home care looks like, so that you can utilize those services and get them in place, not in a crisis yourself. Very hard, very easy for me to sit up here and say, do that, but that's the best that you can do. And no, you're not liable for them getting in the car and having an accident, usually. There are always, because I'm an attorney, I never say there's never, but usually. It is something where, as long as they continue to have capacity and competency.
Thank you. And I'll just,
Under protective services, there is a sort of a category of, it's called caregiver neglect, right? So really what that's about is if you've accepted the responsibility of, say, doing their grocery shopping, right? And you're getting to the point where, you know what, I can't really do this anymore. It's fine as long as you can stop, as long as you make arrangements to have that task or that service, whatever role you were playing, now delegated to someone else who will continue to do that. If you just say, oh, forget it, I'm not doing it, and walk out, and you're leaving this person without any way to get groceries when you've said that you would, then that's an issue where protective services would, someone could report that and work with you and work with that person on trying to get services. So it's really about trying to get them services, but that's where I say a lot of times the reports that we do get for protective services is around when a caregiver is overwhelmed. So it's just everyone's best interest is just learn the services, get connected, and really look at setting some boundaries for yourselves around what are the kinds of things that you can do, and really know, like, well, you know what, if it got this far, I really don't want to do that. Maybe it's, I don't want to give them a shower, right? What is the thing that you can do? Or maybe, I can do this piece of it, but I can't do the bill paying. I just don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to. So you can say, I don't want to. We just need to try to figure out how best to find some other resources to provide that service.
One more question.
One thing I thought of that is, I don't know what goes on in the workshops that you carry out for caregivers, but role-playing with people who are having difficulties with communication between two parties, to set up a friend who also knows the recipient and can mouth off and can give all kinds of resistance and all of the anticipated behaviors that make it so difficult. And role play and then brainstorm on ways to circumnavigate it I actually wind up doing that with myself.
It's a good technique.
And constantly trying to put myself in my caregiver's place. And having another place away from them, away from Minuteman, away from my insurance, where I can spout off. Very, very important.
Good thought, good thought. I think we're going to wrap up now. It's been a very successful evening, I think, and I appreciate the questions from the floor, and I want to say thank you to all our panelists. I think we got more from them than we could have anticipated. We want to invite you to have some cookies, and our panelists will hang around for a while and be willing to answer any additional questions you might have. And we thank you all for coming, especially on a night like this. So let's give a big round.